Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Monday Merriment. Today is November 4th, 2024. The moon phase is waxing, and the moon sign is in Sagittarius. Right now is a good time to strategize business plans, seek out a new love interest, and a good time for socializing. Well, daylight savings time ended at 2 a.m. last night, so it looks like I'm going to have to change the clock in the kitchen. So anyway, I had a few intuitive messages that I wanted to kind of go over. I know I've been really tired. Like I got home on Friday night and I felt exhausted. And then I really didn't do a whole lot on Saturday. I know there were things I needed to take care of, but I literally felt like my body just needed to rest. I am exhausted mentally as well as physically right now. So, I mean, I got a lot of rest yesterday, so now I feel more energetic. So anyway, I wanted to kind of go over some of these messages. The first message I got is that is the network that I'm associated with, and I've been getting like all kinds of messages in my mind while I'm sleeping, as well as when I first wake up about certain individuals. Okay, and no, I'm not putting anyone on blast. I'm just having a conversation, and I don't have any beef or anything against anybody. But this particular person, I don't, it's a kind of a sensitive topic, so I'm going to refer to you in your astrological sign, which I believe is my astrological sign because you are, I believe, my twin sister. You are Leo 14, okay? And I do believe that might be my real actual birth date. But anyway, yeah, you've been flashing through my mind, and I do want to tell you this. It's like I don't really feel as though I have anything personal against you. I don't really know you. I just know that somehow or another you got swept up into this chaos. And, you know, there's a lot of weird things that that seem to have gone on throughout this entire thing. I mean, going back to birth, you know, I don't have any recollection of you or our mother or any of that, you know, but apparently I must have gotten to the Gordon family sometime around at the age of 3. Okay, and I do think that we do resemble each other. We are what they call fraternal twins. Obviously, we have different fathers, but we do have the same mother. And I do see the resemblance. I do think that we look a lot alike. But I do know growing up, you know, I have always had this interest in twins. I know I watched, what is that movie called? The Parent Trap. Now, I've never been like a big Disney fan or anything like that, but I remember watching that show, that movie, and thinking it would be so cool to have a twin. Like, I used to think that was like the coolest thing, and I always had an interest in that. And I do know that, you know, Joseph Mengele, a lot of his test experiments were conducted on twins, which is why I find this so interesting. So we were basically test subjects, I guess, in some ways, but more so me, obviously. And I do think that perhaps maybe you were brainwashed, as well as a lot of other people in the group, to see me as some sort of monster, which is one of the reasons why we ended up growing up separately in the first place. But yeah, no, I mean, I can't believe like the what do you call it? The propaganda that was going on against me. It's not true. Okay. I do kind of question like why. I don't know. I couldn't do something like that. Like I don't know, but I do think that there's a lot of people who are not used to having children exhibit supernatural abilities around them. Okay, and that could have been the reason why we were separated. Okay, that could have been the spark, because according to some of the intuitive messages that I get, and I do not personally recall making items levitate as a kid. I do remember having extreme visualizations, and I do remember having a conversation with, you know, like a little, what do you call it? Clay apple that my adoptive sister made. And we put it in the window frame. And I remember having a conversation with it. Like, you know, I've always been into being able to have spirit communication, but apparently based on my intuitive messages, you know, certain things were levitating that my adoptive mother witnessed, and I do perhaps believe that maybe it could have been too much for, you know, the birth mother. So anyway, Yeah, you have been flashing through my mind. Also, another person who has been flashing my mind would be Capricorn 4. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit more about allegory today. Allegory is like, kind of like using representations to explain something else. So, one of the topics I'm talking about today is I'm talking about my interpretation of The Wizard of Oz. Okay. I think this is just kind of one of these like fun things that I've been wanting to do. And I do think and do suspect that perhaps maybe CB Berganza did inspire other people to wear turbans in fortune telling. Now, I gotta say, as Maria Gordon, I am somebody who is very attached to color. I literally feel color, the vibration of color. And what's strange is that like in the 90s, I started collecting bandanas. Okay, why? Because I wanted to put them on my head because I was inspired to do this because I would see like Sink men wearing their turbans. Now, this is me as Maria Gordon, and I would notice some of them were of different colors. And I, as a mystical person, said, I love the idea that they are wearing these colors on top of their head. Now, this may not even be the reason why they're doing it. Okay, but because I love color, I understand that color is a form of energy. And when the sun beats down on it, it's intensifying it. So that idea appealed to me. So I started collecting bandanas and would wear them around my house. And I still, if I see one that's cute at the store or whatever, that's colorful or whatever, I will still buy it, especially at Walmart because they're like only $1 or something, right? So, I'm looking back in my journey of who I am and how this relates. Okay. Now, as when I first saw the picture of CB Berganza, I did notice he was wearing a turban. Okay. And then I started thinking about how other people who are depicted in movies wear turbans. Like, for example, The Wizard of Oz, which is what I'm going to be talking about a little bit later in this video, right? Okay. I remember seeing it when I see depictions of like fortune tellers, you'll see like somebody in front of a crystal ball and they're meditating, right? And they have this little turban on top of their head. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of research on turbans because I do suspect that here in the United States, how we identify these like people who do fortune telling and anything that's related to the occult, how in the world did something that is really associated with this Eastern religion, right, get common, among everyone. Now, I am not saying for sure 100% that it was CB Berganza, but I have my suspicions. Now, I looked up turbans in Wikipedia, right, because I wanted to get a little bit information on not just Indian people wear turbans. Turbans have been used in different places of the world. That's something that I thought was important to confirm, okay? But here in the United States, to wear them commonly, and I do believe that CB Berganza was very open. He must have been very open about being an occultist. Like, I've never been somebody who just like advertised it, but I'm not somebody who felt like I should hide it either. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go into a quick little definition of explanation of the turban, right? Okay, this is what it says. It says, wearing turbans is common among Sink men. And then in parentheses, they say Dastar, and infrequently women. They are also worn by Hindu monks. And this is one of the things that I was identified as here in this country as I was, getting by, I guess, as survival, saying that I was like a Hindu mystic or whatever. Okay, now going back to the article, it says the headgear also serves as a religious observance, including among Shia Muslims who regard turban wearing as sana, confirmed tradition. The turban is also the traditional headdress of Sufi scholars. Muslim men might wear the turban during prayer. Additionally, turbans have often been worn by nobility, regardless of religious background. Now, I didn't wear a turban back in the 90s, but I still like the idea of having a form of headdress that would incorporate color or in a certain symbolism or energy that I felt I wanted to wear on my head. And I do think that not only did the turban serve the purpose for that same reason for CB Berganza, it also served the purpose of him hiding his extremely curly hair, which would have been a dead giveaway, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. Now, I'm sure there are many people who have interpreted the story of The Wizard of Oz, okay? And I have not watched a lot of videos or done a lot of like research and different articles on other people's interpretation, but I know it's out there, okay? Just like Alice in Wonderland. These are the two uh, stories that were created by people who were very deep into that new thought movement, okay? That C.V. Braganza was a part of, okay? Now, my view of The Wizard of Oz is that it's an allegorical tale of the journey to enlightenment. Okay, this is based off of theosophical teachings, which they refer to as the Golden Path. Now, the writer of The Wizard of Oz, that would be L. Frank Baum, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He was a member of the Theosophical Society. What is theosophy? Theosophy is a religious and philosophical system established in the United States in the late 19th century. It was primarily founded by the Russian mystic Helena Blavatsky, and based largely on her writings, it draws heavily upon older European philosophies such as Gnosticism and Gnosticism. That's how you pronounce it, really, and Neoplatism, and Indian religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism. Although many adherents maintain that theosophy is not a religion, it is categorized by religious scholars as both a new religious movement and a form of occultism from Western esotericism. There were 14 books written in the Oz series. Now, I admit to not reading all of them, but I did, however, know that many of the scenes in the movie were not in line with the book. For example, Dorothy's shoes. Now, in the book, Dorothy's shoes were silver, okay? And in the book, Dorothy is supposed to be 12 years old, which may be the reason why they originally wanted to cast Shirley Temple for the role of Dorothy. However, Judy Garland ended up getting the role, which I love Judy Garland, and I can't even think of The Wizard of Oz without her in it. She fit the role. The first Oz book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, was the inspiration for the movie that we all know so well. Okay, now it would surprise me if somebody never saw The Wizard of Oz, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of a summary of what the movie is about and the book is about, okay? Now, the film is about a 12-year-old farm girl, and her name is Dorothy, and her last name is Gale, although there is no emphasis on her last name in the movie, but that's her name in the book, okay? So, who's played by Judy Garland, okay? She lives on a Kansas farm with her Aunt Am and her Uncle Henry. And she's one of these kids who's kind of dissatisfied because everyone in her environment is basically an adult. She's pretty much the only kid around, right? And she's constantly focusing on, something better. So she starts to dream of a better place, and she's thinking of somewhere over the rainbow. So shortly after that scene, Dorothy gets struck by a loose window hinge, and it knocks her unconscious. During this time, up until this time in the movie, the filming is done in what they call, I believe it's called Sepatone filming, where some people would say, oh, it's black and white, but the coloring of the filming has more of a brownish, grayish type tone. And I believe that this was done on purpose to kind of emphasize the mundane. Like, it's just kind of like humdrum, kind of boring, which, like life on Earth is kind of like that, right? Let me back up a little bit. See, the window hinge gets undone and hits Dorothy in the head because there is a tornado. Okay, so the tornado starts to, wound itself up and everybody runs for cover, but Dorothy finds herself out of the shelter that her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry have secured themselves in, right? So she's sitting here all alone with her dog Toto. Okay, and then that's when the window hits her, and then she gets knocked unconscious. Now, when Dorothy wakes up from her slumber in the dream state, right, she goes outside and it's completely bright in color. It's very bright, vibrant, okay? And then when she looks at the house um, that she was in, okay, the house apparently has landed on the Wicked Witch of the East. Now, in the book, the Wicked Witch was like a middle-aged wicked woman, and she would literally terrorize the Munchkin County in Oz, okay? And she would force the Munchkins into slave labor during the night and the day, okay? And she had these silver shoes in the book, but in the movie they used the ruby slippers, okay? And I think a lot of people remember the scene where, you know, when the shoes are removed, how her legs kind of curled up. A lot of kids got freaked out by that part, right? Okay, anyway, the witch is killed when Dorothy's farmhouse lands on her, okay? And then, you know, in the book, her body turns to dust. So, of course, you know, Dorothy realizes that she's far away from home. And then she ends up meeting Glinda. She's the good witch of the north. And she gets advice from Glinda to follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City and meet the Wizard of Oz, who hopefully can return her back to Kansas. So Glinda advises Dorothy to take the yellow brick road in order to get to Oz. Okay, and during Dorothy's journey, she meets the Scarecrow, a Tin Man, and a Cowardly Lion. They are also going to join her on this trip. Now, Dorothy is in need of a way to get back home, and the Scarecrow apparently has no brain. The Tin Man is lacking a heart, and the Cowardly Lion is obviously lacking courage. They are all hoping that Oz can give them the things that they need. Now you'll notice that Dorothy is now wearing the ruby slippers, okay? Which, you know, I just want to say something really quick. Now, I love how Dorothy is dressed in this film, okay? She's got what they call a gingham style dress with the little checkered pattern of blue and white, which is really cute. And when I think of them throwing the little red slippers together with it, it just made the entire outfit. Okay, but that's just me loving on clothes right now. Okay, so anyway, she starts up on the yellow brick road, and the thing is that they have to dodge the Wicked Witch of the West. Okay, she is trying to get the ruby slippers that once belonged to her sister, which is the Wicked Witch of the East. Okay, now that Dorothy has received these particular slippers, you know, this is the main goal of the witch. She wants those slippers back. Now, of course, the Wicked Witch of the West is not working alone. She is enlisting the help of her flying monkeys. Okay, and these flying monkeys basically follow her orders. Whatever she wants, they're going to go out and do. So she does all kinds of things to Dorothy in this movie. Just to summarize it, because I don't want to make this movie very long, there is a part in the movie where Dorothy falls asleep in a field of poppies with her friends, you know, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion. They all fall asleep in a field of poppies, okay, to induce sleep so that to prevent Dorothy from continuing her journey to Oz, okay? So there was all kinds of things that they did in order to prevent her from getting there. You know, after dodging many tricks and obstacles, Dorothy and her new friends finally reached the Emerald City in order to meet the wizard. So they finally get to meet the wizard, and the wizard is just a simple man behind the curtain with a lot of props, and he comes off as very angry, and uses a lot of scare tactics to get respect. So they're all disappointed because they come to the realization that he is not capable of providing the things that they want, right? So to speed this up, the wizard gives the scarecrow a diploma or like a degree or something. And so now the scarecrow feels confident that he has a brain. And he gives the Tin Man a little replica of a heart necklace with a little clock in it. And he awards the Cowardly Lion a badge of courage. So exactly how is Dorothy going to get what she wants, right? Well, the wizard doesn't have the power to just zap her back home. So they decide to take a air balloon. But before they actually take off, Toto gets distracted by this little kitty and starts chasing it. So Dorothy gets out of the balloon and runs after Toto. Unfortunately, she misses her ride. The balloon starts taking off, and the wizard doesn't even have the power to stop the balloon. So the wizard ends up floating up in the balloon all by himself. Now, like I said, this movie is a very, very long movie. I remember watching it as a kid and thinking, man, I'm enjoying this movie, but it's a bit long, okay? So I'm trying to speed this up as much as I possibly can. Okay, so out of nowhere, Glinda pops. Glinda, the good witch of the West, pops up and lets Dorothy know and reminds her that these ruby slippers had the ability to transport Dorothy back home all along. And all she had to do was click her heels like 3 times and say, that this is what she wanted to do. Now, what Dorothy is doing is she's focusing on going back home, and she's saying there's no place like home. And behind her is Glinda with her little magic wand waving it behind her. Dorothy wakes up and she is with her Aunt Am and her Uncle Henry. Now later in the scene, the other guys come back who just so happen to play the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. They all come in, popping their heads through the window, greeting Dorothy. And then it closes by her saying, there's no place like home. I found a picture that I was talking about earlier in the other scene. This is where she's greeted by, the guy who plays the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. I believe the person who's in the window, I can't really see their face, but I believe that might be the wizard himself. Okay, so now I'm going to start interpreting the movie based on my view of it. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who have their own view of what this story means, okay? But based on my understanding of the author of this book and his teachings and what he believed, it's very likely that he incorporated these ideas in his writing. So, we're going to start off with Dorothy. Okay, Dorothy is just a person who's living in Kansas, and she is a child, okay? But I guess in some ways that kind of reflects her innocence, not really knowing and being somewhat, innocent, not really understanding how the world works, okay? And she's also thinking more about better things, more, to improve her way of living, because she seems very bored living with just her Aunt Em and her Uncle Henry and her regular life, okay? And you notice how they depict the scenes in the beginning of the movie. They're very played down. They're not vibrant in color like she is in the Land of Oz. It's all very kind of just, everyday humdrum. One of the songs that most people remember from the movie is Over the Rainbow. And I think it's interesting because rainbows generally symbolize God's protection. And some people in different cultures have looked at it as a bridge from heaven to earth, at least, by our view, how we see it. But of course, when you look closer to it, closer at a rainbow, you can tell that there really is no connection. It's basically a reflection of light against moisture is what it is. But still, symbolically, I think that she's looking at the rainbow as a way of detachment, looking at something that's more spiritually invigorating. Okay, so shortly after she sings the Over the Rainbow scene, a tornado strikes, right? And I know that symbolically tornadoes usually represent chaos, and then also things that relate to karma, and also bringing things to order, like order through chaos type thing. And in some schools of thought, like when it comes to theosophy, what we're talking about, Frank Baum, the writer of this book, I know that they did discuss things like reincarnation. So there's a possibility that they are talking about this as well in this movie. Okay, so I'm open to this idea, but I do believe that the tornado in the movie specifically, okay, does represent, something coming, something like whether that be enlightenment or the answer to what she is seeking. It's coming to her in a form of a tornado. So when I'm thinking about this more, I'm thinking, okay, so in the first scene we see that Dorothy's singing about going over the rainbow and she's thinking about it really intensely. And then all of a sudden a tornado comes, right? I'm thinking, okay, her her desire to have some sort of understanding or some sort of connection, she's crying out for it, and the tornado is the response. Kind of like, like a tornado is coming to her in response to what she's seeking. Okay, so when Dorothy wakes up from her state, her dream state, Dorothy's actually in what I would consider like a dream within a dream, because she got knocked unconscious by the window pane, but she wakes up in the land of Oz, but carries on her daily activities in Oz, but she's not really sleeping. She's sleeping, but she's not. You see what I'm saying? It's like, because she was unconscious in Kansas, and then she wakes up in Oz, but she's not really awake. I think you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, so when she does wake up, everything around her is super bright, okay, and surreal, which kind of shows how when you make the comparison between how things are in the dream state. Like when you dream, a lot of times things around you are 10 times brighter than what they are in the regular everyday. Like you might think about the lighting in your home, and in your dream, as you're dreaming about the same house, the lighting in the house is brighter. Okay, that's just one part anyway. Also, when Dorothy is dreaming, she's dreaming of people that she knows back in Kansas, but they're taking on different roles, which I find interesting because the characteristics that she's painting on the people that she knows in her regular life, her waking hours as Dorothy on the farm, she might personally have certain subconscious thoughts about, maybe she might think that the guy who's the field hand guy doesn't have a brain. So it's coming out in her dream. Now, as I remember, Glinda is the first person that Dorothy has an actual conversation with in Oz. And Glinda is the one who advises Dorothy to set off on this journey using the yellow brick road after she gives Dorothy the ruby slippers, which in the book are silver. Now, in the book, I believe that, or suspect, that the silver shoes were supposed to represent some sort of astral cord between the sleep state and going off into the dream realm. Okay, this is one of the reasons why Dorothy was able to come back to Oz, from Oz, back to her home. This is the silver cord that separates from the astral body, has the ability to keep that person from venturing too far. Like, when you astral project, you come out of your body, but that astral cord, which is believed to be silver, okay, in color, keeps you attached to your physical body. Anyway, so Glinda advises her to go down the yellow brick road with the silver slippers, or in the movie, the ruby slippers, okay? Now, at the end of the movie, towards the end of the movie, Glinda tells Dorothy that she could have gone home all along. So I look at this as some sort of message where Glinda sends her off into this venture knowing that she could just take the easy way out and go back home. But this is a required spiritual journey that Dorothy has to make on her own to come to the realization that these sort of things were inside herself all along. Now, I think it's interesting that the beginning of the Yellow Brick Road, which is in many schools of thought the golden path, or in my mind, I consider it like a path of illumination or enlightenment, whatever. Anyway, I find it interesting that the beginning of the Yellow Brick Road starts off in a spiral. And when I think of spirals, I think of evolving and transformation. And I think that this is one of the things that the message that he was trying to convey in this movie and in the book. Now, although the wizard uses a lot of props and other people to promote himself, you'll notice that in the Land of Oz, the answer to just about everything is the wizard. The wizard can do this, the wizard can do that. So they pretty much hyped the wizard up and led Dorothy and the Scarecrow and all her little friends to believe in him, right? So they go down the Yellow Brick Road and they come to find out that the wizard is just a man orchestrating things behind the scenes, right? Now, some people, like myself, see this in different ways, okay? Now, I remember making a video when I first found out that I was targeted, talking about how when many years ago, I would say like 2007, I believe, I was targeted, but didn't realize I was targeted at the time. I had encountered somebody at a group meetup who I believe was specifically sent to me to encourage me to go to a Christian church. Now I look at the wizard in the movie. My interpretation of the Wizard of Oz can represent false religion that poses to be a powerful, all-knowing solution to everyone's problems, but what it really is just somebody pretending, and also using, forms of coercion, perhaps, because, in this movie, if you watch it, and I do suggest you see it if you've never seen it before, he's got people, what I believe, like in the movie, I believe like the witch of the West who's after Dorothy, I do believe they all kind of work under the same umbrella. Okay. So anyway, the wizard, I believe, kind of stands in for these sort of oppressive type religions that keep people in blind to real truth. Okay, because when I think about Dorothy going down this Yellow Brick Road, when she could have very well just went home, okay, but it's something that she had to know. She had to know the truth, and the truth is that this man was just simply a man. He did not have the ability to take her home. Okay, he couldn't even control the plane, right? So going back to my story in 2007 as an example, okay, I was being targeted to go to a particular church, or just any church, because when you really think about it, all these churches were interconnected, as I found out. But anyway, they would set up scenarios. Like, for example, I was out of a job, right? And I needed to find a job. So they made it seem as though, me going to this particular church or affiliating or associating with certain people were going to get me a job. And this is exactly how they set it up, as if me making this lifestyle change was going to get me blessed with a job. So I ended up working in Chatsworth, I believe it was. Okay. So just much like in the movie where they find out that this was not some sort of divine act of providence that I got a job in Chatsworth, what it really was a bunch of people getting together and making it seem as though it was something that was divine. Okay, so Oz is exactly that. It's a representation of either people or an individual in power who create some sort of disguise to seem like they are all knowing, all what do you call it, all powerful, but in fact they are not. Okay, they're using a lot of props and intimidation factors or tactics. Like in this scene where they first meet Oz, or they first get a glimpse of Oz, he's showing himself, I guess, in like a hologram type view. And he noticed that the way he looks, his face looks really mean, and he's got these torches on the side. So it's creating a lot of fear, of course. And if you're fearful, you're not going to, he's hoping that they're going to back away or be nervous and not actually proceed, but they proceed anyway, right? So when they ended up finding out that he was just a man behind the scenes, just a regular old person who doesn't have the ability to do really anything without the use of these props and other people to do the work for him. Now, when it comes to the Scarecrow character is someone that I believe represents a lot of people. A lot of people are reliant on the Oz to tell them that they're smart, or rely on them to feel as though to validate their intelligence. Okay, and I am in no way talking bad about receiving like bachelor's degrees or anything like that, but we can see that the Scarecrow obviously did have a brain, right? But they granted him this diploma knowing good and well that he had the ability to do this himself, which is one of the topics that I am going to be covering in my education series. Okay, I know a lot of people have been convinced that they need, to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to be educated, when in fact they could do that themselves. And the reason why they feel like they can't do this themselves is because of a certain group of people who benefits them to keep people on the hamster wheel, right? So sadly, because there is this sort of power structure that convinces people that they're dumb and they can't live without this particular system, okay, they create people who are dependent on something that's not real. Isn't that brilliant? That I could think of something like that. But yeah, I believe that, the Scarecrow represents, you know, people being blind to the fact that, yes, they have the intelligence all on their own. They don't, I mean, and I understand the need for credentials and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying is that, yes, people have the brains to figure things out for themselves. They have just been convinced that they're not able to do anything without this Oz type programming. And of course, Oz did grant the Tin Man a heart, but the Tin Man already had a heart. He had emotions and feelings for Dorothy, which you can see this throughout the movie. He does express concern for her in the movie. But I do find it funny how, this Oz programming or people in power could make people believe that they cannot do anything, function in any way possible without somebody giving them something or validating a person. So really, I mean, the Tin Man had a heart just like the Scarecrow. He had a brain all along. Now, when it comes to the Cowardly Lion, I will say that in the movie it does show scenes of him being freaked out or running away from things. But ultimately, he did take that trip with Dorothy. Okay? And so he obviously had courage. It just wasn't something that was activated. And a lot of times we don't know that we really have the nerve or the courage to do something until we are actually facing that moment. Okay, so once again, the lion already had courage. But he gets validated by the Wizard of Oz. Now, I could not find a scene that I thought was good enough for this, uh, the demonstration of the flying monkeys. But, in some of my videos that I've made, like when I first found out I was being targeted, I do make reference to flying monkeys. And flying monkeys are basically people who are doing the bidding for the people in power who are orchestrating the targeting. Okay, so like in this case, we had like the Wicked Witch was consulting with the little flying monkey in one of the scenes that I showed earlier. And then he gets the groups together and they all go flying out of the window to do whatever it is that the witch instructs, okay? Now, I know that a lot of people remember my videos that I talked about when I was talking about, what was his name? Libra 14, okay? I do believe that Libra 14 was a flying monkey. I totally believe that, okay? As well as some of the people that I knew in the past. They were flying monkeys, informants, or people who were deliberately sent to cause some sort of problem, some sort of issue, pretend to be a friend or whatever, okay? So the same situation, okay? Now, I know like when I was being religiously targeted, you know, I dealt with a lot of flying monkeys or people that they will use to communicate with you or be your friend or pretend to be whatever, okay? And that's what a flying monkey is. So I believe like overall the movie of the Wizard of Oz is a allegory that covers the falsehood of religions that keep people blind to the truth. And I also believe that it depicts the use of other people being set up as like, you know, ops in some way, informants, flying monkeys is basically what it is. And I believe that there was a lot of celebrities that were used as flying monkeys. Yes, I do. I do believe that. When I think of Toto, her dog, I think that her dog represents her own intuition, you know, because when I think about how Toto leaped out at the cat, right? He went to go chase the cat, and instead of her getting into the balloon ride, hey, you know, if she needed to go home, I would think that she would just leave the dog, okay? But she felt some sort of need to go chase after the dog. Toto, in my mind, represents her intuition. I know that dogs are extremely psychic, and if it wasn't for Toto getting out and chasing after that cat, then Dorothy would have never been able to realize her own power. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that would be my summary or my little theory of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So I'd like to know what you think. Unfortunately, I probably will not know what you think, mainly because this does get cast on the Shadow channel, and I don't get comments a lot, unfortunately. But, you know, I'm sure that this is going to be somehow imprinted in your mind, and you will start to think about this movie and perhaps watch it if you have not watched it, or maybe watch it again so that you can develop your own interpretations. So overall, I would say that the movie The Wizard of Oz does illustrate mind control to a certain degree, because we have this group of people who fully believe in the power of Oz, directing other people to follow the power of Oz when Oz is just a false illusion. I also know that when it comes to the study of mind control, like MK Ultra mind controlled people, they do have issues relating to false realities, and I would say that I'm a good example of that. You know, I had mentioned Leo 14, who is my twin sister, who I believe we did grow up under some sort of false reality. I had no knowledge of her even existing until I believe a year ago. Okay. So, you know, when it comes to mind control, there has to be some form of disassociating your reality, basically disassociating you from reality, okay? I had no idea that I was a completely different person. Like, all these years, I thought that I was James Gordon's daughter. And I am technically, because, you know, we are related, but it's kind of like he's not my actual biological father. Okay, it's through the cloning process, right? And so, but of course, I love my father, just like as if he was my real father. But still, you know, my reality is not, has been distorted, okay? And that's the purpose, and the goal is to distort people from reality. And that's exactly what they did. So when I think of, disassociating, my background was completely hidden from me. I didn't know the truth of who I was. And this is something that is very common with people who are under mind control. They don't know who they are, and they're basically left to explore the answers themselves, because they certainly are never going to tell you. So when I think about Dorothy making the journey down the yellow brick road, and even though Glinda knew that trip could have been avoided, it was something necessary that she had to do. She had to do that. Okay. Also, I want to wrap up in my theory of the Wizard of Oz. I do believe that it represents the false religion of, and I'm not, when I say Christianity, I want to make it very clear that I have nothing against people who choose to worship Jesus or anything. It's just that when I think of institutional religion, and how it uses fear tactics, much like, the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, and come to find out that it's just an orchestration of things like, flying monkeys and whatnot. It becomes very clear that um, Frank Baum, who wrote the movie, obviously saw things from a different perspective. Like, he understood that religion was something that was used heavily to keep people blind to the truth. And this is something that I believe he expresses in the Wizard of Oz. Okay, you guys, I don't want to take too much more time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with the synchronistic symbol. So last week's synchronistic symbol was the bluebird. Okay, for those who are wondering how I determine the synchronistic symbol, I have a bunch of like hand-drawn pictures that I put in a bag, and I shake them up and I pull them out randomly, okay? So I just pulled out this synchronistic symbol for this week, and I find it kind of funny that it's a rainbow. So hopefully you'll see the synchronistic symbol of a rainbow this week.